Now, Mark Fergus got involved, and we dropped that exclusively before everybody else. That Mark Fergus got involved basically at the end of The Expanse. He was a writer and producer, etc., on that show, executive producer. And when The Expanse ended, they basically said to him over Amazon, "What do you want to do?" And he said, "I'd love to have a go at Stargate. I think it's a brilliant project. I'd love to give it a go." So he got involved, and he was going to basically be the showrunner, etc. And this is ridiculous. I can't even believe I'm saying it, if I'm honest. But that basically meant that as far as Jennifer Salke was concerned, it wasn't a priority. She was pushing for other projects to be pushed forwards instead. And Mike Hopkins noticed and was not happy.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.
As far as he was concerned, Amazon basically had a promise with Mark Fergus to allow him to do this. There was sort of a big deal over The Expanse when it moved over to Amazon. Jeff Bezos himself got involved in it because he was such a big fan of the novels. And when the big boss man likes a show, other people get involved. And Mike Hopkins had those conversations with Mark Fergus apparently, and had basically made verbal promises. Promises that Jen Salke was not fulfilling. Now, that is not why Jen Salke has now left Amazon MGM as the head of the studio. It was down to Bond. Her complete cock-up with Bond and her relationship with Barbara Broccoli, the executive producer of the Bond series, basically got to a point where they had to pay Barbara Broccoli $1 billion, just over in fact, to basically go away and wrestle creative control back to Amazon MGM so that they could make the movie they wanted to make. This was because of Salke and her pushing for a completely different type of Bond franchise. For one, she called it content to Barbara Broccoli's face. Never a good idea. She also, Jen Salke this is, was pushing for a change to Bond's character. They basically wanted to make him less of a womanizing, drinking misogynist and more of a well-rounded person. Still a spy, etc., but more, I don't know, family-friendly? I don't know. But basically, I think Jen Salke looked at this and from a feminist viewpoint thought, well, we don't like him. So she was actively trying to push and make changes. This caused Barbara Broccoli to call them effing idiots, which really isn't a surprise. But get back to Stargate, Courtney Valentini, apparently, as the head of film, never liked the idea of a Stargate hard reboot. She always said that that was a mistake. Mike Hopkins, who, don't get me wrong, is not a big Stargate fan. Steve Wright over at MGM Plus, he's the Stargate fan. He's the one that's been desperately pushing for Stargate and a TV series all this time. But Mike Hopkins did see that they spent 8.5 billion quid on MGM, and there was 3 or 4 big franchises over at MGM that they desperately wanted to exploit. And Mike Hopkins basically, from day one, said Stargate was one of those top 4 or 5 things that they needed to get on with. And Salke didn't push for it. So, the strikes kind of killed the movie. But it was then Jen Salke not prioritising it is what really killed it. Now, throughout all this time, MGM Plus and the people that were basically left over from MGM's demise were pushing for a TV series. They have had several meetings with the hierarchy over at Amazon to try and push for this, building up evidence. We've reported on all of them over the last 3 years over on scitrek. They had PR people, etc., do a couple of different studies and questionnaires into what people prefer. And that is what Mike Hopkins was seeing. When he's pushing for Stargate, he's not pushing for it because he's a big sci-fi fan. He's pushing for it because he saw the raw data. He saw that Stargate is still a very popular franchise that still has a very large active audience. He saw that actually a hard reboot would have killed the fan base. We wouldn't have accepted it. And after what happened with the Rings of Power, which he, again, oversaw and saw happening, and actually is largely to blame for rather than Salke, he did not want that to happen again. And insiders have always told me that's called the Rings of Power problem internally at Amazon, and they do not want that again, and they pointed that to Stargate. Now, Jen Salke apparently didn't really care about that, and she fought for the movie the whole way. She never changed her orders to Courtney Valentini, and apparently the Stargate project is still on the books for Amazon to produce at some point. It was delayed, yes, by the strikes, and then it was delayed, yes, by Amazon changing its business model slightly. They decided they were going to start running with their own studio spaces. They've rented a long-term deal with a bunch in Vancouver, but they've also got this Hackman group that they work with very strongly, that they're actually a major investor in, that actually built and rent them their studio space at Culver City, and their headquarters was built by the Hackman group and leased out to the Amazon by them. Hackman Group have been building and regenerating a bunch of studio space in Canada, New Mexico, and a couple of other places, as well as California, that Amazon have now got long-term deals to lease. So they were basically going to have this plan of, instead of letting other people produce Amazon stuff for them, they were going to start producing it themselves. Much cheaper, much more cost-effective, but actually also much more creative control over the project that actually then gets made. So, everything was sort of put on delay. Jennifer Salke was in charge of deciding what projects would then be prioritised. And she never prioritised Stargate, even though it's still on the official calendar they've got for projects to go into development. We told you just a few months ago that it was getting now prioritised and would be going into development by the end of this year at some point. Maybe. I'm going to get back to that in a minute. The thing was, during the strikes, lots of projects that were planned for that nearly 12-month period had all been delayed. So all of a sudden, you've got all the projects that were planned for 2024 being taken up by all the projects that were supposed to be done in 2023. The calendar had become very condensed. So Salke was in charge of prioritising which projects happened first. And what she did was she prioritised projects she preferred. Female directors, female writers, female producers, etc. That basically meant that Stargate was kicked down the road again. Mike Hopkins, as far as he's concerned, had had a verbal handshake agreement with Mark Fergus, and he considered it a promise. Mark Fergus went over and was doing the God of War series for 12 months, but now he's left that and Ronald D. Moore has took over the reins. We were hearing rumours, and they were very speculative, that might be because Amazon was about to switch back to the Stargate plan they had originally had, and that Mike Hopkins was pushing, now that Jen Salke had actually lost some of her power over Amazon MGM, to actually fulfil the promise to Mark Fergus and to let him do the Stargate he wanted to do. Mark Fergus always had these big plans of making it into a big, like Marvel-esque sort of thing, where it would be movies and TV series and things that intertwined with each other, and he really had big plans for the Stargate universe. It seemed that Mike Hopkins was willing to let him do that. Now, that still might be the case. As far as I'm aware, Mark Fergus has not moved on to any other major projects. He's got a couple of scripts on the go that are working on, etc., and a couple of projects he's involved in, but nothing major since leaving God of War. Or is it Warhammer? It might be Warhammer. I always mix those two up. The one that's not Henry Cavill. I'm doing this entire video without notes, by the way, so if I've made the odd little mistake, get into the comments. You know you love to. All from memory, baby. It's all trapped in here. Like a steel trap, this is. Particularly for names. You know this. It does feel like, and I have been told by a couple of different insiders, that is kind of the plan, but nothing has moved forward. Why? Jen Salke leaving has basically meant there's a complete rejig now over Amazon MGM. And what they've decided to do is they are reviewing all of the projects that Jen Salke was pushing for and agreed to. And that might actually mean that basically anything that's been announced that hasn't actually physically gone into production might not happen. And they are trying to rejig the calendar. That might or might not be a good thing for Stargate. It really depends on whether Mike Hopkins does plan to fulfill his promise to Mark Fergus or not. Or will they go in a completely different direction now? The head of movies, Claudia Valentini, I don't really know what her position is on Stargate other than she was in the belief that she didn't want to do a continuation. The head of TV, whose name I've completely forgotten, but the guy, Mike Wright, over at MGM Plus, have always thought that actually a TV series is a way to at least start the project. Hopefully, Mike Hopkins will listen to them. Mark Fergus was more than happy to do either, from what I'm told. He just wanted them to make a bloody decision. So the truth is that because of Jen Psaki's agenda, because of her wanting to push female directors, creators to the forefront of MGM, basically meant that Stargate was put on the back burner. And that every opportunity she had, even though her boss was pushing for it, every opportunity she had to push it back further, she took. She actively blocked Stargate. And that has really annoyed fans. And really put us off any future plans for the project. Just realised how long this video is. I'm going to have to cut it into 2. But, oh well. I've just splurred everything out of my brain all in one hit. You know I do this occasionally. So guys, get into the comments and tell me what you think. Now Jennifer Psaki is gone. Some people have said the witch is dead. But now she's gone, can we actually start seeing some projects by Amazon MGM that fans want to see? Rather than projects that are twisted by an agenda that really... Hey, look, I think feminism is fine. I think women's rights, I agree to everything else. But I do think equality means equality. And I think that if I'm head of a studio, I'm getting the people with a creative idea, regardless of whether they've got boobs and a penis, into the role. I think if Mark Fergus has got a great idea for a project that has made our company hundreds of millions of dollars over the years, I give him the opportunity. Particularly if that's what my boss wants me to do. But hey, Jen Psaki didn't agree. But now she's gone, do you think that is a good thing for Stargate? Yes or no? If you are new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell notification. It really helps us out. Also, you can become a member of the channel and get to see videos like this 24 hours before everybody else. So go check that out. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.